All right, what's up? Thanks, guys, for being on. If you guys are listening to this through, if you're one of my people, my regular listeners, my two guests today are Aram Grigorian and Andrew Coates, who are probably two of the most shared actual fitness coaches on social media. So if you see posts being shared on social media that are fitness related, there's like an 8 out of 10 chance it's like one of these two guys.
You don't even know that they're Aram's posts because he won't put his name or his picture on them,
That
which I
is
get
that
upset
is
for.
But ironically, now it's like he's like built a persona as that. So like when you see like the plain white or the plain black background with just font, and it's a very specific font, you're like, oh, that's probably 4 weeks to the beach.
And most of my content is just stolen from Andrew Coates from 2 years ago, and I'll just repurpose it. So it's perfect.
I mean, we all say the same stuff anyway, right? It's just different ways
In
of
a
wording the
sense.
same stuff.
That's
In a
honestly
sense.
all it is.
If you are listening to this though and you found this through Aram or through Andrew, my name's Adam Badger. I host this podcast called Talk and Fit. Want to do a quick intro with you guys. This is a coaches roundtable, so we took questions from listeners or followers. We're going to give honest opinions on that. So yeah, just a quick intro from each of you guys. Andrew, if you want to go first.
Quick. Been a personal trainer, 13 years, still work full-time in person, do some online stuff. Had a podcast for 6 years, just celebrated 300 episodes. Had a second podcast for 70 more. I get to do a lot of these. They're fun. I write for a whole bunch of stuff. You probably recognize it, a bunch of stuff you don't, like Muscle Fitness, Men's Health, T Nation, Kabuki Strength, yada, yada. And last little bit, I've got to do a ton of public speaking. I have an event of my own in Edmonton. It's been really cool. So, but one of my favorite people in the industry for his abundance and awesomeness is Aram. So, Aram.
Aram's intro.
Uh, 15 years in the business as a personal trainer, 3 years online. Don't like a lot of people, like these three people or two people that I'm with right now, trying to bring the best people that I know together in this industry. That's why I host my event. And that's why I try to talk about good coaches on my page. Try to bring people real information that's practical that they can do and implement immediately. And I'm just trying to wade through the rivers of bullshit that exist in our space.
Nice. The reason why I have that too is to just let people know who are listening. So Aram's at 15 years. Andrew, you're about 13 years in. I'm on year 10. And 10 years in, and I'm the rookie of the three of us. So you're getting some
That's
really
crazy, right?
good quality information, good quality experience from here. So yeah, we'll just jump right into it. So I'll kind of rattle off a question and we'll kind of just, rant on it and give an answer. But Ram had one that came through his Instagram that we wanted to start with. But besides this one question, these two guys don't know what the other questions are going to be. So Ram, what was the question you got that Andrew seemed to be very fired up about?
Yeah, so it was I like variety in my food and don't want to eat the same things over and over again. What is your advice?
All right, Andrew, let's hear. You were pretty amped up about this
This
one.
this cuts to the core of something deeper, and I look for stories and narratives that people tell themselves as to why they're, being held back. This is one of and there's always empathy for where someone's coming from, but it's also a bullshit narrative people have to get over. You literally have to get over this nonsense. Every time I encounter it, it is always someone that I work with or someone online who is struggling with, the goal of, hey, I want to get leaner, I want to feel healthier, et cetera, et cetera. But then it's this, hey, I'm a picky eater. Hey, I don't like eating the same thing 2 days in a row, right? It's a story.
Mhm.
This is something that you tell yourself, and so therefore it becomes a justification for not doing the larger bulk meal prep. One of the best habits you can engage in, because everybody says, well, I don't have enough time to cook healthy meals all the time. Cool, is batch cooking. Now forget these meatball fitness competitors who will show you the picture of the counter completely covered in like what looks like 4 weeks worth of containers with rice and chicken, and there's no sauce or anything remotely
Mhm.
flavorable in this entire thing. Okay.
Nope.
And they're like, oh, I spent all day Sunday. No, you fucking didn't. You didn't spend all day Sunday. You're being performative. You're like putting on a big show about how like arduous your bullshit is. Guess what? I cook a salmon every Sunday. I throw it in the oven. I bake it for, I think it's 35 minutes. That takes virtually no prep time. I chop a bunch of Brussels sprouts in half. I throw them in another pan. I line them both with tin foil. They don't even get messy. Sometimes I have to run them through the dishwasher if it spills over a little bit. And that takes an extra 20 minutes on top of the salmon. And I boil a pot of rice. Guess what? I throw it on. I can literally sit down and watch TV or do something else that I think is a little bit more productive. I listen to podcasts or audiobooks while I'm prepping. This does not feel like torturous amount of time. I have to clean my cat's litter. I do that while the rice is boiling. Okay. So you could do this stuff 2 hours max turnaround. I've done the cooking. I've sat down to eat it, and I have one meal for there, and I usually end up with about 5 more meals, which covers me for 2.5 days before I have to cook again. So back to the original thing. And again, this broader thing is question all these fixed narratives that you have about who you are and why you can't do things that are actually fairly basic, routine, healthy behaviors. Yes, we're in an environment full of abundant, awesome, delicious shit. You're looking for an excuse to eat all that awesome, delicious shit and and tell yourself, oh, I'm not the kind of person who could actually be consistent with my nutrition or eat healthy or be active or what have you. Now, this sounds really bombastic, and this is a departure from my usual empathetic stuff on social media, but I also like cutting through bullshit. Now,
I actually like this real quick because I was gonna say when we first started, I was gonna be like, Aram and I are kind of dicks sometimes, but Andrew's really empathetic and nice. But he totally threw us for a loop on this one.
We got like the Venom. We got like the Venom version today.
I like it though. I like it. Aram, what's your opinion? I know you get this question a lot in your question box on your stories. I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple. It's going to be the similar answer to Andrew. Like we're not doing the bodybuilder cook on Sunday and then have 17 meals a day prepared every day because nobody's going to want to eat that shit anyway by Thursday. And let's be honest, from a scientific standpoint, I don't know that I'd want to keep that much meat in the fridge for 5 days straight and still be eating 6-day-old chicken on Friday. Like that's not going to sit well with your gut. So I like doing like a 2 to 3 time a week bulk ingredient prep where I'm doing 1 to 2 proteins, 1 to 2 starches. But guys, condiments. Like there's so many calorie friendly condiments out there between the hot sauces, between the GQ's barbecue sauces. If you're not anywhere near like a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's, or you live in another country, go on Amazon and start researching these things. And all you need to do is you can eat the same shit over and over again and flavor it 55 different ways with herbs, rubs, spices, and condiments. And now that same beef and rice dish is going to taste different 3 nights a week. But the other commentary on that is that we've expected food to be like a fucking party in our mouth, and it's just not going to be every single time. Like not every occasion is a special occasion. So not, all of our lives are lived within the boring margins outside of the peaks and the valleys. But for some reason, we expect this flavorful dopamine payoff with food. And that's just because people's palates are so fucked up because they go out to eat 5-6 days a week. When I grew up, I was going out to eat once every 3 or 4 months, and that was a special occasion. My parents got dolled up for it. We got in the car, like my father was like, oh man, this is going to cost me a fortune. And now it's like everybody's a foodie, everybody's going out 5-6 days a week, they're trying every restaurant. And when you have that type of liberal view of eating, you have zero control. So you don't get to get upset that you're not getting results when you have no idea of calorie consumption or content.
Yeah, I actually I dealt with this question a lot with clients, and I always used to use this. And so whoever asked this question, maybe this will help you. I would always challenge them by saying, okay, well, like, can you just lay out a normal week for you now? Like, what is a normal week of eating for you now? So you said you really like variety. Give me a normal week. And they rattle off, they eat the same shit every day anyway. It's just that they're not paying attention to it. So they probably have 2 to 4 taverns or pubs that they regular on the weekends. They have their go-to breakfast, their go-to lunches, their go-to dinners. They're already eating the same shit. It's just that there's no intention behind it. So as soon as there becomes an intention and now they're expecting a result, they're like, oh no, I don't like to eat the same thing all day, every single day or multiple days in a row. And I'm like, you eat the same thing all the time right now.
You just said it. You just don't like eating the things that you think are healthy or committing to eating those things because you think it's a life sentence that you're locked in. And I'm going to go back to my example about like my salmon, my Brussels sprouts, my rice. I enjoy that. It's more nourishing and I feel better after I eat it than virtually any fast food. Okay. Like this is another thing we got to challenge. Like think about what it felt like the last time you had the metaphorical McDonald's burger, fries, drink, etc., or any of that sort of stuff. You don't feel good. This stuff feels fucking terrible to consume if you're consuming it most of the time. Now, I like a Dairy Queen Blizzard once a week. I find it's a really nice treat. If I am eating a lot of really healthy, nourishing food during the week, then that feels great. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. And here's something I talked about a lot in different media, and I think if people grasp this, this will go a long way. is I really like putting the food you eat into 3 buckets. There's the really healthy, nourishing stuff that you know you like. There's tons of that stuff, right? Home cooked, good stuff. A lot of I think the issue is like people planning time, preparation, these narratives. Oh, I don't like eating the same thing. And then there's all this mediocre rubbish that you eat on a fairly consistent basis out of convenience, out of lack of planning, out of whatever is going on in your world. You're reactive to things. And that stuff, it doesn't taste good. It doesn't feel good. It's expensive. So you kind of have that nagging, oh, I just waste a lot of money and calories on consuming this garbage. You feel guilty for it. And then you still crave bucket 3, which is those non-negotiable things that you really treasure and you love. And so when you go have that because you enjoy it, you feel guilty for eating that. If you cut out bucket 2, just eradicate it or cut it down, build around the healthy, nourishing stuff, it's going to fix 90% of your problems right there. You actually create room to enjoy. Like Alex Hormozi gets on with this, like, what is it? Never skip dessert. Like, and he talks about this. He counts his calories. He's pretty dialed in, whatever. And he knows he's built in room for this thing that he really treasures. But Alex is definitely a fairly routine guy. He's probably eating, I know he eats out of restaurants a lot. You know, he doesn't home cook because he's got the money for it. That's a whole different thing. But, you know, he builds in that room and it fits for things that he really enjoys. And I try to live by that philosophy. And when people hear that, they're kind of like, oh man, that makes so much sense. It's not even hard. That's the thing. It's not even hard. You just built this story up in your head, in your mind that it's hard. It's arduous.
Yeah, and I think also most people, when they switch to trying to make healthier decisions, they tend to switch to the most bland, boring versions of them, right? So they're like, they go to Panera Bread every day for lunch and they get a bread bowl with mac and cheese in it, wherever they serve for Panera. And they're like, I'm gonna start eating healthy. And then they start eating tuna, like plain tuna over salad. And they're like, oh, I can't eat this every day. It's like, well, no shit, you can't eat that every day. Like, you know, and like, of course not. But you were eating the same thing every day before. It was just something that you didn't have to think about. It was mindless, which is why it was palatable. But like another one I add to this too, and then we can go to the next one if you guys want, but is you weren't like a Michelin star chef before you started trying to be healthy. So don't try to be one now. Like you don't like you if you're eating ragu sauce and spaghetti and meatballs like 3 times a week, and so you're eating the same thing and it's not like super interesting or super, palatable, and now you switch to whatever, salmon and Brussels sprouts and rice, like it's not that big of a deal. But you're putting so much pressure on this decision and you're expecting a result from it, then that's why it just feels like commitment. It's like if you're dating a girl for 12 months and the whole time you haven't been dating anyone else, but you just keep saying, no, she's not my girlfriend. It's like she's your girlfriend.
And also just remember, like, you're an adult. Like
You're a fucking adult. Just
like
do
you're
it.
not supposed to like snack and eat like children's, and even children's food shouldn't be children's food. Like we label
Oh
children's
yeah.
food to be like chicken fingers and mozzarella sticks and bullshit at restaurants, which like I've seen dog menus that were healthier than children's menus at most restaurants, especially here in San Diego. Like my dog menu was salmon, green beans, and sweet potato. And then the kids menu in the same restaurant was chicken fingers, fries, and pizza.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And this is the problem, is like we have this really skewed view of what food is, and it's because this stuff is really cheap. It's very flavorful. And don't get me wrong, I love all this shit. Like I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
it all. And I live in a weed legal state. So I can be stoned out of my mind, and this stuff is the only thing I'm not sitting there and be like, man, I really could use some more white meat chicken today.
Yeah.
I think, no, I want fucking Stacy's pita chips and burgers and fries. But I know if I eat that shit, I have to pay the consequences for it. And I'm not willing to do that anymore.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I agree with what Andrew said earlier too. It's like I feel better when I'm eating these more balanced, protein focused whole food meals, to the point where, once in a while, like I said, once a week, maybe twice a week, I want something that's a little different. But even then, I can eat it and forget about it. But it's because it's so routine now that I'm not putting pressure on every decision I make every day, which I think is a huge part of the issue. Which actually it transitions well into the other question I got, which I felt was a good one to talk on. This is from Kathleen. She said, for someone who is very results driven and their main goal when signing up for a coach is to lose fat, what advice do you have to offer someone just starting out with this type of mindset? And this is actually a one-on-one client of mine. So she put in parentheses, I know we are working on this one-on-one, but I think it's great for everyone to hear because I have a ton of friends in the same boat as me and they're scared of getting a coach. And I think what her point is, they're scared of getting a coach which is, I'm sure you guys will dig into this, right? They're very result driven. They want to lose fat, but then they're scared of hiring a coach. like very contradicting, right? So what advice would you give to someone like that?
I
Andrew,
think
you want to go first?
something that's really important, and our industry is grifting on this bullshit, and I'm getting tired of it. Chris Williamson calls it toxic compassion, where our industry is more interested in saying to people, "Oh no, you're perfectly okay the way you are. You shouldn't want to lose body fat. Your goals are wrong. Your goals are invalid." Guess what? Someone's goal is to lose body fat. It's a valid goal. Now we have to get into what's their dieting history. Definitely, if there's eating disorder history, stuff like that, you have to be very careful with that stuff. But on its face, if someone decides that I don't feel good, I do want to lose body fat, then guess what? Let's stop invalidating that discussion, that goal. So right there, plainly. Um, I think the way that I like to go about this sort of stuff is I still lean on two things. I like to impress upon people that, especially if they're results driven, which I also think is fine. I kind of give them what they need as opposed to I give them the air of what they want, but I wrap it up in what they need. And one is I like to redirect everybody to feeling strong. Like so the other part is enjoying the experience of working out, being in the gym, being with a coach. So I want them to like me. I want them to like our relationship. I want them to have fun. I want them to come back because if they keep coming back because they like you and they're enjoying the feeling of, whoa, shit, I'm getting stronger. This stuff's amazing. Then what tends to happen is they develop the consistency, the baseline, and you build the trust. And then you can start having conversations that go into what are the narratives and the stories that they're telling themselves that are holding them back. You get the trust to be able to gently nudge them away from, okay, maybe keto didn't work for you the last 4 times. Maybe keto's not the answer this time, right? Maybe we can look at tracking your calories, or we can come up with some other sort of strategy that will probably be more sustainable for you. And if you build the trust and if they like you, and if they're feeling really strong, you get them kind of hooked on the experience of the working outside of stuff. I tend to find it's just easier to navigate the nutrition. Aram.
So I like the idea of giving somebody what they need first and then being able to build towards what you want, because without a stable foundation, without a structure, without some measurable objectives, and without some measurable actionable steps, we don't really know which way to pivot, because the body is an adaptive and reactive creature. So let's say, for example, somebody starts with you and you just immediately bury their calories and put them into a deficit. Like, yeah, they're going to lose weight coming out of the gate and they're going to be thrilled. But what happens when that weight loss stalls and their body adapts and now they're not losing weight anymore, or their compliance slips, or their dog gets sick, or their husband gets laid off, whatever happens. We have to be able to have a lot of foundational basics in place, measured and understood. And by default, by having those basics ingrained into your lifestyle already, there's no direction that you can't pivot from at that point. If you want weight loss, you get weight loss. If you want performance enhancement, you can go to performance enhancement. If you want muscle gain, you can go to muscle gain. But I think being able to understand and respect where you're starting from is the biggest asset to any client that starts. And that's the responsibility of the coach, to very specifically communicate that, and also communicate expectations of what that relationship and the deliverables are going to look like. Like, I want my clients to know this is what I need from you as a client. And based on what you're delivering to me, this is what you can expect for me to deliver to you. I can't go and do the work for you. I can't prep the food. I can't train you. I can't do anything. I can give you feedback on everything you give me. But at the end of the day, this falls on you. So you have to want it more than I want it for you. But this is what you can actually expect from a tangible standpoint. Because a lot of times I think people are signing up for coaching and they don't really know what they're getting, and they don't know what their role is or their responsibilities are. It's like, yeah, I want to lose fat. Okay, cool. Like, we already know how to do that. Losing fat is not hard. It's one of the easiest things in the world to do. Drop your calories and do more work, and you're going to lose weight. But then what happens when it stops? Or how do you make that sustainable? The role of a coach is to get through those psychological pitfalls and to fill in those educational gaps that people don't have. And then hopefully at some point create a new identity for that individual, or help them create their own new identity, and also be able to install this stuff as a part of their daily life.
Yeah,
There's a
one piece of piece of advice I give people who say that results driven is it's okay. Like Andrew said, it's totally okay to want results. Like, we all want results. My question to you is, like, how do you react when the results aren't coming at the rate you want? Because that's when I find that most people say, like, I'm just very results driven. And I always say, like, kind of, yeah, but like, you also give up as soon as you're not getting them. So that doesn't tell me that you're results driven. That just tells me that like you want results now so you can then go back to what you were doing before. So I think if you're dealing with people who are very results driven, they just want to lose weight, but they're already like they're hesitant to hire a coach. They keep pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off. It's more that you're more afraid of having to confront the things that actually need to change than you are about hiring a coach. I think you're more afraid of having to change the amount of times you go out to eat or having to actually, which is a big one for clients too, is having to actually explain like how many drinks you have per week, right? Like when they're like, I drink a couple nights a week, and they're like, well, how many? And then it's like 13. So that it's like having to confront that stuff that I think people are hesitant to do because they're like, well, I just want to sign up for something that's cheap, quick. I lose a couple pounds, and then I can just go back to what I was doing before. So my question to your friends, Kathleen, would be like, okay, if you are results driven, are you actually results driven, or are you just using that as a reason to validate not starting?
A narrative. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to Ram's point about what happens when things stall, there's a reframe that I love on this one. Like, people talk about plateaus. It's definitely a place where people quit. It's like, okay, look at it this way. You have now demonstrated you're not making progress, but you're stalled. You've also now demonstrated that you're able to successfully maintain your best ever state, your strongest, your leanest, your most consistent, whatever. And if you can just have a quick conversation and get that person to realize, wait a second, I'm actually doing really good here. I am actually proving that I can do this. And that might get them to stick it out long enough to start seeing the needle move again. And that's a simple reframe that I like leaning on.
Yeah, no, I also like to help clients also reframe like what do you qualify as a result? Like is a result only how much weight you lose, or is it only how lean you get, or is a result, hey, I got 5 workouts in this week when normally I would have gotten 0? Is a result I meal prep this week when I normally would just eat or takeout? And the one really big thing that I've been kind of shifting my messaging around with my clients is, and I had this talk with like my group call that I do with my clients once a month, and it really resonated with people. Was if you woke up tomorrow and you had your goal body and you were at your goal body weight, and you inherently knew that it was never going to change, so you never have to worry about gaining the fat back, but you had to make decisions based on like what would make you feel your best and feel your most confident. What were the decisions that you would make? And everyone, what do they say? I'd probably walk more. I'd probably make sure I was working out. I'd probably eat healthier. So do that stuff now, like, and stop focusing so much on just the weight loss.
That's it.
Yeah, it's like it's honestly it's like you see, I said it's very simple once you're like actually doing it. Um, did you have anything to add, Andrew? I don't know if I cut you off on that one.
No,
Can you
no.
can you imagine if we were able to go back like 100 years and had these conversations with people in like the 1920s and 30s? They would fucking laugh at us. They'd be like, "You guys don't know how to prepare food in a bowl, and
Yeah,
you guys don't walk, and you guys don't exercise. Like, what do you do with your lives?"
dude, I wrote a whole email about this earlier last week. Just explain how for like I don't know decades and decades and decades there was a lot of in shape people and no one ever tracked a macro. So like people just obsess about these little things. It's just basics. It's basics like eating whole foods, eating protein, moving, lifting some weights. Like it's the same shit over and over. It's just I think people I don't know. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. They watch like one episode of like the Drew Barrymore show and she has a doctor on, and next thing you know, they're like questioning whether they should eat almonds. It's like insane. The next question. This one's a pretty simple one. How accurate would you say are in-body scans? Do you recommend getting one as a baseline, then comparing it to another scan in a certain period of time later? For example, if your focus was like building lean muscle, like say you're in a phase where, overall you probably want to lose weight, but you're in a phase where you're building lean muscle. Do you think it's worth getting a body scan?
Can I take this one because I love this question.
I got some thoughts, but I want to see if you get most of them first. Go for it.
I feel I'm gonna roll the dice and say we're all gonna have the same answer.
Who gives a fuck about your body fat percentage and how much percentage fat and muscle? Like, is the mirror not enough data for you?
Mhm.
Is how you feel on an energy and mood perspective on a daily basis not enough data for you? Like, if you have gobs and gobs of removable fat that you can grab with both hands on your body, you've got problems. And if you're looking down and you're seeing very little stomach and like visible muscle mass, like you probably just have to tighten things up a little bit if you want to get to that next level. So like, what are you going to do with the data that you accumulate? Are you just going to like sit there and be like, well, I was 12% last week and now I'm 13 and I'm dying? Like, you're going to be obsessed about another number, because if that's where you're going, you're probably obsessed about every macro that you track and every rep that you don't hit and all this other shit that's just bogging up and clogging your mind and taking you away from the essence of being human. If you're a high level performance athlete or you're a bodybuilder and this shit matters, okay. But you standing on an electrical impedance scale with holding on with your hands and your feet, like it's not going to tell you any information that's pertinent at all. And what it's going to do is it's probably going to end up putting you into a mental tailspin that you won't be able to recover from.
Yeah. And even if you were at that high level, right? No, at Mr. Olympia, when they hop off stage, they don't go, okay, in-body scan.
Yeah, let's go.
Like, let's see who actually has more muscle.
Yeah, exactly.
These things have such high error rates that they're actually relatively worthless anyway. Virtually, like I think it's across the board, every different possible measure, DEXs, which is thought of as a gold standard, bod pod, body impedes. Body impedes are useless. We had an old gym, used them. I'd have a client who's visibly leaner, gets on the thing, whatever weird thing, spits out an anomalous reading that shows higher, and then I got to spend the rest of the session, like getting them out of that mental tailspin. So James Krieger did really good stuff on this. You could probably Google it if you want to get into it. I know it's on his Weightology review. And so there's the average error rate, which it varies by thing, but I think a lot of the average error rates were like 2 to 4%. And think about this for a second, that's average, that's bell curve. So the individual error rates that these fucking things are spitting out was actually much, much, much bigger than that. And when you start getting into error rates that could potentially be 10%, you're basically just getting useless information. If there was reliable repeat, let's say you got a scale. Let's say your scale always weighs you 5 pounds off, always. And you only ever use that scale for your entire life, and you're not emotionally attached to that number. You're just looking for a change. That's fine. No big deal. If something reliably is inaccurate, but you're always getting like the direction of the data, there's no problem. All good. But these things, I've seen it for myself more times where we're just seeing inconsistent readings that are not reflective of everything else that's going on. Oftentimes body water or God only knows what. Anyway, so the same way that a scale fluctuates day to day just for people. So I used to train a bunch of hockey kids. Their dad had hired me. The guy stiffed me for some money too, so still a bit of a pet peeve of mine. But he was really, this is old stuff. He was really caught up in the idea of like getting their body fat tested. And I was like, no, like there's no value in this information. One of the boys was a little softer than the other ones, and you could totally tell the guy was like emotionally beaten down because his dad was, having these conversations about this stuff. So there's some toxic shit there right off the hop. And it's like I knew what was going to happen. This data was going to be used to like emotionally manipulate these guys and grind them down a little bit even more. So, part of my whole thing was I'm going to protect these kids from even having to deal with this bullshit. But objectively speaking, I thought it was a giant waste of his money. And as it turns out, he didn't have the money to be able to spend on it anyway. So I really try, again, today, you caught me a little bit more bombastic because these questions are actually great. But you still have to approach these questions every time when you got the client in front of you. And it's a very soft, empathetic, I want to build trust. It always comes from a place of trust. And then if you weave in a little bit of humor, it can work really well too. Mm-hmm. But no, for me, that stuff is a really hard no.
Yeah. And for the person who asked this question, her name is Kristen. This isn't us coming at you. It's a valid question. It's more the concepts of, a lot of these things are at these big chain gym sort of places where they're onboarding hundreds of members a week. So what they do is they put you on this thing to give you a number so that in 8 weeks, when you've done 6 HEC classes a week for 8 weeks and you dropped X amount of pounds, you can hop on it again and they can say, hey, do you want to sign up for another year? But realistically speaking, like Aram said, if you can't tell it's the same thing with like BMI. Like with your BMI, like I don't need a BMI to tell me if I'm overweight or not, right? So it's just a number. I would argue that it's a useless number. I don't really think it matters. Is it going to affect your decision making, or is it really you just looking for an external feedback? And I think it really comes down to, and this is where I have empathy, is that people who get obsessed with those numbers, who get obsessed with their macros, who get obsessed with their BMI, it's because you don't have a built-in trust of your own instincts and decisions. So you're looking for something to tell you you're doing things right. But if you like, if I'm very confident in my decisions around food, around training. If I went onto an InBody and it told me my body fat percentage was higher than I thought, I would be like, well, yeah, the machine's probably a little bit off because I feel fine. But if you don't trust your instincts and you already have body image issues and then you get this number, I don't, like you guys said, I just don't think the mental stress is worth it. I would use that same bandwidth and energy towards prepping your food for the week, scheduling your workouts, and then, saying no to some social invites, and then you'd get way better results.
Yep.
All right, next question. This one, oh wait, I had one that was really good. Here we go. This is from a different Kristen. And I think this is a really good question. Any tips for staying in maintenance after losing 50 plus pounds? I'm finding the mental shift from cutting to maintenance difficult at times, but I know that I can't cut forever. First off, congratulations on losing 50 plus pounds. That's amazing. But I think this is a really good, really, really good question. So yeah, I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Aram, go ahead.
So the technical side of this answer would be understand where your maintenance is going to be now, right? So, and that's going to probably be a moving target that you're going to have to kind of slowly figure out over time, unless you have a coach. If you have a coach, that's their job, is to figure that number out for you, or that range out for you, because it's never a pinpoint number. And I want people to be really, really attentive to that. So like when we assign calories to people, it's not like if you go a calorie above or a calorie below, it's going to make any difference whatsoever. You're probably truly really living in like a 300 to 400 calorie range. So like 150 to 250 above and below whatever number we set, you're probably going to be fine. So whatever that maintenance number is going to be from a technical standpoint, just understand that that is going to be kind of your new place to live. So that means that you're now 4 meals a day or 3 meals a day or 5 meals a day needs to be centered around those parameters. And now the expectation has to be that this is something that is just going to be my average behavior. So my intention is not to lose weight at this number. My intention is not to do anything but live in a sustainable fashion at this place. And if I want to, I can maybe layer in a little bit more food. But the reality is if I still have more body fat to lose, I could probably live at maintenance and still be able to achieve aesthetic and probably even performance result-based goals. That's the technical side. The non-technical, mental, emotional side is that, like you said, you cannot diet forever. I mean, let's say you have 300 pounds to lose. Yeah, I mean, keep going until you're out of the health scare category.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're somebody who's like, let's say like the people that I work with are your average women between 140 and 180. So let's say that 180 woman has already lost 50 pounds and she was at 230 at one point. Well, congratulate yourself that you've gotten there. And understand that you've probably already been living in that 180 state for weeks and weeks and weeks. There's this proof of concept that you can do it. And now it's just a matter of like, you have to understand that you have to pump the brakes for a little while, give yourself some time away from food focus and dieting and being restrictive to rebuilding some semblance of a new balance and a new level of structure. And then do that for, I don't know, give yourself another 8 to 12 weeks in that state to give yourself some confidence that you can do it. And then if you want to attempt another diet, go right ahead. But I like dieting aggressively and briefly. I don't like the long-term, like 16-week cuts. Like we're not bodybuilders. We don't need to do that. So for most of my clients, like I'll put them in a deficit for like 4, 6, 8 weeks at a time if they can handle it emotionally. And then I'll always ask them every week, like, how you feeling? What's going on? How's your food focus? Are you like sitting there staring at every chip that you see? And if you're not, then let's keep going. Like we can push it. But it has to be determined by the person's psychology, because this idea that like your hormones are going to shatter and break like dinner plates because you've been dieting for 16 weeks when you need to lose 100 pounds, it's just untrue.
Yeah.
If you're a 120-pound woman who's been depriving herself of food for a decade and all you do is hit Peloton's rides, then yeah, maybe your hormones are a little fucked.
Yeah.
But if you're 240 pounds and you're trying to lose 50 pounds, like your hormones are just fine. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If anything, your hormones will improve a lot if you get that fat on. I think there's something even more simple. Absolutely nailed it. There's something more simple. I think what happens with a lot of people is they hit that point and then somehow psychologically they just like want to go back to the way that they lived before. You have to realize like you can't live the way you lived before. But even more than that, do you even want to? How did you feel? What got you motivated in the first place? How did you feel? Your energy, your health, every aspect of it, your self-confidence. You felt like absolute rubbish. And let's admit that. So why on earth would you want to go back to the behavior that left you feeling like abject rubbish?
Mhm.
So it's yes, there's a spectrum of this, but really there's sort of a dichotomy. It's like, okay, can you just continue to engage in the healthy behaviors that you engaged in and do all the stuff we're all talking about? Or are you going to just say, ah, fuck this shit. I'm going to go right back to the way I was before. The answer is don't go back to all the crap you did before. Okay. Triage out all the stuff that made you feel miserable. Look at the stuff and go, yeah, I love, sitting down and watching episodes of Reacher. Cool. Non-negotiable. It's the only thing I literally watch on TV right now. Only bloody thing.
Yeah,
He's
he's
not
fucking
hard.
jacked. It's unbelievable.
He's a monster. Anyway, beyond that, I just have no craving for television anymore. People are like, oh, you should watch this movie. I'm like, I won't watch it. I like joking. I'm like, I won't watch it. I don't watch anything.
You would watch the Equalizer. You'd watch the Equalizer series.
Absolutely. I mean, like, there's special. So here's my take on this. This is a complete departure from all this sort of stuff. I'm old enough now. Like, I understand my dad and why, like, dad hit a certain point where he didn't want to consume new music in his life. My dad is a real audiophile, but yeah. And now I like new music. I like if I do stuff. But when it comes to any other intellectual property, movies, television, video game shit, whatever, I overwhelmingly want to go back and watch old movies or revisit familiar characters I feel like I have a relationship with. I will watch if they make 40 more Fast and Furious movies. Me and my friend Donovan, we have a ritual. We will go on opening weekend and go to the theater and watch a new Fast movie. Like the one where they put the car in space was the moment that I could no longer suspend my disbelief about the physics of this world. Up to that point, it was great, but I still love them and I still enjoy them and I still like being part of that world. And like I get excited every time they raise a character from the dead that I really like. They're doing it again. Apparently, right now they brought back Han, they brought back Letty. There's another one they're going to do this with. Like if they get one of Paul Walker's brothers to literally like overlap, like AI, what have you, like they do a good job with it. Like bring back like Brian O'Connor, like bring him back, please. Like I would love that. That would make me very happy. But anyway, I would rather spend time with like keep making Witcher games. The TV show went off the rails, and I'm not going to watch the Liam Hemsworth force. Like, no, just not happening. But bring me more Witcher like video games. I really love being immersed within familiar characters. And Reacher, I just decided, okay, I'm gonna give this a try. Now I like it. It's good. Like the only movie I watched recently was Top Gun Maverick. And I love the whole like arc with Iceman. Because again, these are like characters that I'm familiar with and I grew up with. But I'm not interested in new intellectual property. And that's just me. I've become like a cranky old man about that stuff. Anyway, back to the important stuff.
Same.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I'm done.
He's like, I'm done. I talked about Fast and Furious. No, I
I'm
think
happy.
a good follow-up question to this for Kristen would be like, well, was your goal to lose 50 plus pounds or you like, or where are you at in your journey? So like if this was your end goal, enjoy like the fruits of your labor. This means that like you don't have to diet anymore. And I think that the big shift here for a lot of people is they're so, again, the stories we tell ourselves, your identity for forever has been I'm someone who needs to lose weight. So now it's like you don't know how to live as someone who doesn't need to lose weight anymore. And it's a very hard shift, but realistically, I think this is all just comes back to trusting yourself and trusting your decisions. If you think that you're going to gain back 50 plus pounds because you're eating, let's say, 1,825 calories instead of 1,500 calories, then you're just lacking in understanding. Like you didn't gain the 50 pounds because you were slightly off of your calories or you were at maintenance. You gained it because you maybe weren't working out enough or you were skipping meals and then overindulging, you were eating out a lot. So realistically, the difference between and you guys let me know if you agree with this, the difference between a maintenance diet and a fat loss diet is like, instead of doing a half a cup of rice at lunch, you do a full cup. Like that's literally the main difference. And maybe you're gonna, instead of eating out once a week, you're eating out twice a week. There's really not major differences between those two lifestyles.
Nope. There's something else that underpins all this. We have to get honest and real about our expectations about what we should be able to eat. So, where a lot of these questions are coming from women, I my in-person coaching is 50-50. My online stuff is 75%, plus a women's group is exclusively. Aram, you mostly deal with women, and I think women are the more active, certainly by dollars, by as votes, they're the more active fitness consumers. My following on social media is like almost 65% women. Here's a really unfortunate truth you have to get comfortable with. I mean, our modern society of convenience and abundance has us in an obesogenic, hypercaloric environment, right? So, I mean, you've got large men becoming obese based on their food environment. Women on average are smaller with less muscle mass, right? Yes, there are exceptions. Pedantic people love to, no,
just on average.
on average, guys, please. And so that means that you require less calories to maintain. And the serving sizes in everything is one size fits all. Okay. And they're bigger than they ever were. And then you get media like you got what Carrie Bradshaw, I can't believe I remember that name, from Sex and the City. You get these 4 very small little women who live in these outrageous apartments on, a beat writer salary. I mean, it's pure fiction and nonsense. But so is the lifestyle. They're sitting down having. Here's the thing: you're not entitled to, nor can you have wine every day, eat whatever you want, and expect to stay lean, right? And stay small. That's a myth. That's a pure fantasy. That's partly manufactured by media. It's the environment that we're in. So here's the shitty reality. You actually have to make a conscientious choice and to triage. Cool. What are the things I treasure? And then what are the things that I realize I'm not entitled to? And I mean, this is not universal, but anytime I've ever coached a woman who just really needed her 2 glasses of wine per day to de-stress, which is another narrative, guess what? That's completely incompatible with sustainable fat loss and health. And I'm sorry. And you have to get really comfortable with that. It's like the guy who, at least guys who like drink a 6-pack a night, they have no delusion. They have absolutely no delusion that there's anything healthy about that. They're just like, no, I'm good, right? There's like, the shirt comes off. It's like the Kelsey brother, the O-line. I can't get what, right? And he's like, and he's happy. That guy looks happy, and I love it. I actually thought that was the coolest thing ever. Like he looks like a great guy to go hang out with. I mean, that's the guy who's drinking. I mean, there's also I shouldn't even be making fun of stuff. There's probably some really deeply maladaptive shit going on with the guy who's drinking 6 beers a night. But I used to, a long time ago, I had an old girlfriend who probably drank a bottle of wine or six beers a night. And that was an emotionally abusive and eventually a physically abusive relationship directed at me. That was crazy shit. Yeah. Nothing functional about that human being. Good, kind soul. Think she got over it, but anyway, no one knows what I'm talking about. But you just simply can't expect to live that way, be healthy, be functional, to achieve your quote leanness goals. That's a pure fantasy, and it's and a fiction perpetuated by the things you're consuming, the mental calories you're consuming.
Yeah, and I would love to know too, whatever protocols you use to lose the 50 plus pounds. So if they were in a way that was relatively sustainable for you and you felt good and you did it over the course of 1 to 2 years, then again, you don't really have to change much. It's really like if you're normally eating a piece of sourdough toast and egg white omelet for breakfast, now you're going to add a second piece of sourdough toast. Like that's literally, they took you from a deficit to maintenance. Enjoy it, build muscle. Every female client I've ever had who has lived a certain amount of time on maintenance always says like, wow, I never felt this good before. Like they didn't realize what it's like to feel good in the gym and to get stronger and to perform like that. So just enjoy the fruits of your labor. It's like if you worked a 30-year career and then you retired and then you're like, I'm just going to start from scratch again. Like why go back to dieting? Just enjoy it. Enjoy the work you put in. We'll do, I know Andrew's got a hard stop coming up soon. So we'll do one more question, and it's kind of I think it's a pretty simple question, but we'll see where we go with it. She asks, is it possible to build muscle and lose fat at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Do you want to elaborate?
So I think there's 3 or 4 categories in which that would occur. So category number 1 in the simplest category is somebody who's never really done anything before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like let's say you're completely sedentary, you have almost no exercise experience outside of some intermittent stuff here and there. You have no eating structure. There's never been any focus on nutrition. You like walk into the gym on day 1. You're absolutely going to lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. Somebody who's been out of training for a significant amount of time. Let's say like you were that gym rat for 15 or 20 years, you got injured, you got kids, whatever happened, and then you return back to the gym after a hiatus. That's another population that can do it. Somebody who finally flips the switch from just working out and exercising to actually training, which there's a big difference. There's moving your limbs for a set of 10 and knowing that you could have done a set of 20. And then there's actually grinding through a set of 12, knowing that you didn't have a 13th rep. When people start training to that caliber of intensity, they will probably most likely start to partition fat loss and still be able to create muscle protein synthesis signaling in order to gain muscle. And then there's also the person who is enhanced from a chemical perspective. So somebody like me who's on testosterone, my levels are normal now, but let's say I was super physiological, meaning they were above the normal levels, I would be able to gain muscle and lose fat simultaneously.
Who are the people that can't do it then?
So going to be a little bit harder for people with lower body fat. Like, let's say like you're that classic 140, 150 pound woman who's like been at the gym for years and just doesn't look like it yet. Like that person, once they've trained the way that I want them to train, they'll probably physically plateau and peak at some point. And then you have to, and then you have to actually add calories to get them to gain muscle, or you'd have to reduce calories, because that when you become a one-to-one energy in, energy out calculator, but that requires years of consistency before you get there. Like most people are not that finely tuned. Like for me, if I up calories, I gain muscle and some fat. If I lower calories, I lose muscle and some fat. Most people are not wired that way. It's like complete chaos inside their body. But I do have some clients who are so finely tuned. They've been doing this for 2-3 years. I raise calories by 200, their performance and their muscle mass increases. Maybe the measurements around certain sites of their body will go up. And if I drop calories by 200, same response in the other direction. But most people, 95% will not respond that way.
No, yeah, that's interesting that you say that too, because you have to spend, like you said, a couple of years creating that baseline. And but what you're saying is while you're creating the baseline, you can noticeably build lean muscle and lose fat at the same time. So that's another benefit to actually spending the time and just developing your maintenance habits, and then doing some very responsible deficits. Andrew, what's your take on it?
Covered all the bases. That's literally it.
Yeah. I think a lot of times what I always like to turn to gear people towards with questions like this is whether you can or you can't, it doesn't really change anything. You still got to do all the stuff we've been talking about for 45 minutes. Is like you still got to eat 3 to 4 meals a day, eat your protein, control calories, and lift weights.
You know what? There is a piece of nuance that is worth mentioning. So, I mean, I still try to think about things in terms of strength, and our industry really gets pedantic with a lot of shit. For the average person, strength and muscle growth are probably going to be relatively concurrent, right? Especially if you're in a calorie surplus. Now, we'll often hear people say, like Aram explained it, and I'll reiterate a little bit. You get the person who has body fat to lose, but they're also under muscle because they have never really had the stimulus to put muscle on before. That person has an energy surplus that can actually be woven into the performance and recovery that will build muscle. That's part of it, right? So they're going to have an easy time bringing their muscle up to probably more of a median baseline for them. It gets harder as you get closer and closer to your physiological limits, especially naturally. It's going to be harder and harder to build muscle anyway. It's going to be really hard to do muscle fat at the same time. Now, for the person who has enormous amounts of body fat to lose, not many people I've ever met who are really, really morbidly obese, who also don't actually have a fair bit of muscle. This is a little bit of a myth. Most of those people actually have structurally a fair bit of muscle.
Yeah, they're carrying around all that weight. Yeah.
The person who, has 150 pounds to lose, and let's say that person loses 125 and they're still on the quest. The trainers be like, oh yeah, you also built some muscle. No, they fucking didn't. I mean, some of those muscles might have grown, depending on what you're training, right? Might have bigger triceps or whatever, maybe slightly bigger delts. But if you've lost 125 pounds, a portion of that is muscle. You no longer structurally need to maintain that level of muscle. Have you ever seen an obese person's calves?
Massive.
Jealous.
Right? Bodybuilders are jealous of this stuff, right? So structurally, there's a lot of structure that actually has to, unless that person is like epically sedentary, even just to like stand up and walk around and stuff, there's like muscular structure that has to exist. Okay. So I think one of the smartest things you can do is to train really hard to try to maintain as much of that muscle as possible. But if you strip off 100 plus pounds for that individual, they're going to lose muscle. Now, is that a bad thing? Not really. They're going to be fine. I'm not worried about that person unless they're doing some really maladaptive, deep starvation stuff with no resistance training stimulus whatsoever. I don't recommend that for anybody under any circumstances. Okay.
But that is a good point that you had, though, about like if you have a lot of excess body fat, that is going to count towards your calorie consumption, basically. So like even if you are in a little bit of a deficit, your body's going to use some of those storages to fuel the recovery. So like even though you're intaking maybe a deficit, you're not totally at a deficit because you're pulling from those stores. That's a very interesting point.
I mean, as far as like, your body mass goes, yeah, you're right. You're in a deficit. But yes, some of that fuel in theory is available. It's available to do all of the functions.
Yeah.
And some of those functions are resistance training, recovery from resistance training, building and repairing muscle, right? So it does get woven in there, and people just don't even think about this stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But to turn around and say to someone who's like, 300 pounds, who wants to get down to about 120, and to say, and what are these weird, this is one of these weird ones. I think that trainers oversell this nonsense. You get the person who like wants to lose 30 pounds. And after training for a little while, then they get on the body impedance machine, which of course is useless. And it maybe it shows a difference, maybe it doesn't, maybe it spits out a weird error, but the person has not lost any weight after 3-4 months of training and nutrition. And the trainer says to them, oh, well, you're building muscle and losing fat. It sounds like a really convenient narrative, but the more likely truth is the person hasn't made the nutritional change, especially if the goal is actually fat loss.
Yeah.
The most likely thing is happening is maybe there's a little bit of a shift. There probably is. It's not substantial enough for me to get excited about. Then I go back into, you got to have trust, you got to have empathy, but you got to get into it and go, all right, what's really going on? And every single time that I've gotten like some real answers out of it, you discover that they're eating a lot more calories than they said they were. Sometimes they're lying to you. They don't really want to. It's just a complicated thing. Sometimes they're outright lying to themselves. And you don't accuse anybody of doing that stuff. We also get a hard, honest look in the mirror if you're serious and go, all right, are you actually making some of the changes you need? And we can be patient and gradual with this stuff. But if your body weight's not changing and your goal is fat loss, this idea that, oh, you're building a whole bunch of muscle, for the person who's got substantial body fat to lose, I don't think they're actually building any really appreciable muscle. I think that they're still in calorie maintenance effectively, or close enough to it. And that something fundamental needs to change with the nutrition in order to make the progress. And every time when some sort of emotional thing, something unlocks, something shifts, they're ready, boom, weight starts coming off.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's not because, oh, they were in a calorie deficit the whole time and, oh, stress or hormones, and all of a sudden their body left. No. It was the calories the whole time.
It was, yeah. It was... Go ahead.
I got to bounce, but
oh, yeah.
Appreciate it. Aram, stick around, answer more questions if you guys have time. Everybody listening.
I'm good.
Guys, you guys are amazing. Thank you. This is actually incredibly fun. And I will always leave it here. If anybody has any questions, you can always message me on Instagram. I will always respond to stuff. I still have the capacity to do it. And if any trainer with 4,000 followers struggles to respond to questions in a timely fashion, it doesn't, they're wired weird, and it doesn't matter to them. Because you want to help people, they're responding like questions. Yeah. Grace to the person who's got newborn kids, for real. Okay. And I know different people have different boundaries and priorities, and it's okay to have boundaries. But, if you have less than 10,000 followers and you're not responding to questions in a reasonably timely manner from people who have honest questions, there's something wrong. You're not serious about your business, and you're complaining you're not busy. That's a little nugget for the coaches. Respond to people. Nice.
Coming from someone who has 1,900 followers, if you message me, you'll get 3 1-minute voice message responses with a follow-up like, hey, did you get that?
Did you get that?
And guess what? You can literally, you keep doing that as a coach, and that kind of relationship shit, you have your livelihood right there. You don't need a big social media following.
Oh, I tell that to coaches all the time. Yeah, I've been able to, fortunately, make a good 6-figure living for a few years, so never cracking the 2,000 mark, and it just comes from caring about your clients and being attentive to that stuff. So when I post something and it gets 3 likes, it doesn't butt hurt me too much.
Fair. All right.
I'll see you in Dallas.
I can't wait to see you in Dallas, and then obviously, hey, we got to plug your event, Real Coaches Summit, guys. I spoke there last year. Aram has flipped all his speakers. The lineup's going to be great. I'm going to go down and hang out with a whole bunch of friends of mine. The attendance on this one already looks amazing. I can't wait. I get to go down. I don't have to present. I get to hang out, chill out. I'm staying around for 4 extra days because my mom and dad are flying down, and I'm taking them to Vegas for the first time. So,
That's awesome.
guys, thank you. Gotta
Thank you,
bounce.
guys. Bye, guys.
Talk
Thank
soon.
you.